I think it's very important to reach out where we can and answer questions people have. So today we're going to be watching a video called Hey Atheists, Give Me Your Proof. It's going to be a fun time. This isn't a long video, so hopefully my response won't be terribly long either, but let's watch it and see what happens.
Alright folks, Brother Rob with you again. So I'm just going to jump right into this. I've been thinking about this,
I find it very interesting that these people always have the worst quality cameras. I mean, this looks like it was recorded through a potato chip, not even a potato. But this video is actually very new. It only came out about 20 hours ago. I admit, I don't have the best camera either, but come on.
Atheists and evolutionists, they're always about, show me the proof, show me the proof. So now I'm going to return the favor to all of you atheists and or evolutionists, say, show me the proof.
Okay, let's just discuss some basic things about proof before we proceed, because I do want to answer this in like a genuine way. Atheists don't believe in God, and the reason why we don't believe in God is because there is no evidence for God, no proof for God that we can see. Now, Christians will say, well, what about the Bible? Well, atheists don't believe the Bible. We don't believe the Genesis story. We don't believe any of the Adam and Eve stuff, the let there be light thing. We don't believe it. And the reason why we don't believe it is because there's no proof. It's just some words written down in a book. And actually, when we look at life and the universe, what we see is order rising from chaos. We see an evolutionary chain going back from us to the first forms of life on Earth 1 billion plus years ago. And when you look at stars and things of that sort, the solar system, let's say, what you can see if you look at the cosmos is that stars are born from supernovas, gas and dust, things of that sort. And this is a process we can observe happening right now. We can observe stars and planets being born out of protoplanetary disks. And through that, we know how stellar evolution works. We know the process by which the Earth, the planets, and the Sun came to be. And on top of that, we can now also look very far into the past, up to like hundreds of millions of years after the Big Bang, and we can see very clearly the galaxy formation processes that led to what we have today. On top of that, we also have good evidence of the Big Bang through the cosmic microwave background radiation, which we can see. That's just one example of evidence for the Big Bang. Another one is the speed at which galaxies are receding from each other. You can tell that galaxies, the further they are away from you, the faster they're moving away from you. This only makes sense if at one point in time, all the matter in the universe was condensed to one specific point. That's very important. That's the essence of the Big Bang. We have evidence for that. We have evidence for the cosmological processes that brought about the Earth, and we have evidence for 1 billion plus years of evolution through DNA and the fossil records. That's all very important stuff. That's where atheists are coming from. So, when you say, show me the proof, well, there's a lot of it for you. But also, specifically as it relates to God, we are not saying with 100% confidence, 100% certainty that there is no God. There may be a God of some kind. I don't know. I don't think there is, though, because I don't see the need for one. I don't see any evidence for one. I don't see any proof. But let's continue.
Show me the proof of how you can get life from non-life. Show me.
Okay, so I've pointed this out before, but I think Christians like to get on this point because they think it makes them have a stronger case. We don't know how the first life forms emerged, therefore, it must have been God. But no, we have a pretty good idea of how the first life forms emerged. We don't have the specific details. We don't have all the specific details of how it happened. But we have a pretty good idea of how it happened. We have some pretty good educated guesses, and scientists have been working on this problem for somewhere in the range of 100 years, maybe the last 50 or so, more specifically, more directly. And as a result of this, we are working on it. But the problem is the universe itself had billions of years to do this. If life on Earth emerged, let's say, 1.5 billion years ago, that means it took, the universe right now is what, like 13.8 billion years old. So that means 12.3 billion years the universe had to create life. Humans haven't had nearly that long, which is why it's taking us so long. We have to figure it out and make it happen, and we've made enormous strides towards this. Professor Dave has videos where he explains exactly this. So, we do have a pretty good idea. We are trying to make it happen, and at some point it will happen. And then, of course, they'll have more objections, but the key point here is we are working on it. It is coming about. YouTube's algorithms work on watch time, so if you like this video and videos like it, please watch just a little bit more of it than you were planning to. Even a minute or two helps. You can also like and subscribe, which also helps with the algorithms. Thank you, and let's get back to the video now.
Me, the proof and the evidence. How you can get, just that life and non-life. How you can get everything in life from nothing. No design, no creator, no guidance.
I would suggest you read some books on how this stuff came about. I always recommend, as a primer on evolution, Richard Dawkins has a great book called The Greatest Show on Earth, The Evidence for Evolution. It lays it out fantastically. I would encourage everybody to read that book, regardless of whether you're a Christian or an atheist. If you've never read it, please read it. It's awesome. It's a consumer-grade book. It's not difficult to understand. It's fantastic. Another one I could recommend is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which is another fantastic book that gives the true story of humanity and our evolution and our path. And then, of course, you could go get some physics books. There are some consumer-level physics books, like Lawrence Krauss, A Universe from Nothing. Plenty of books like that. Stephen Hawking has some books on this subject. Plenty of books you can read about this, and the evidence is all laid out for you to see. So check them out; they're great.
How do you get millions of different species with no designer, no guidance? How do you get
Survival of the fittest. When species have to compete, there's like an evolutionary arms race that takes place. So species are always competing with one another. And the species that are most fit to their environments survive and continue breeding and such. And the species that aren't as fit to survive don't survive. They're wiped out from the gene pool. Over time, this results in an incredible diversity of life. It's a beautiful process. And again, you should read a book or two on it.
Get DNA with no guidance? How do you get
Evolution through natural selection.
Cellular structure with no guidance?
Evolution through natural selection.
How do you get uniform in nature with no guidance?
You say uniform in nature with no guidance? Well, nature isn't really uniform per se. Universal laws seem to be pretty uniform, but that does not mean the universe as a whole is uniform. I mean, there may be like a uniform distribution of matter and such, but even that is kind of questionable on at least the levels we can observe. So uniform, I'm not sure I would say that things really are truly uniform, although the laws themselves that govern them certainly are.
How do you get seasons in life without guidance?
Well, we orbit a big star called the Sun. Now, we orbit on average about 93 million miles from this big star called the Sun. That's an average though, but it varies some. But that's not what causes the season. What causes the season is the Earth has this thing called axial tilt. We rotate on an axis, the Earth does. And the axis goes back and forth. It wobbles around. It's not in one place. And as it does that, the seasons change. It's really fascinating stuff. Again, you should read some books on it.
How do you get the flowers without guidance? How do you get pollination without guidance? How do you get
Evolution by natural selection.
bees without guidance? How do you
Evolution by natural selection.
get the creation of the honey and pollination without guidance?
Evolution by natural selection. I don't see why these things take guidance if you've got evolution by natural selection over potentially 1 billion+ years. It seems like that would just be a natural outcome to me.
How do you get birds knowing how to migrate from certain parts of the world to the other back?
Well, if they didn't, they'd have a really hard time. And, you know, not all birds are migratory. Some don't migrate. Some skip seasons. There's plenty of diversity to birds and their migration patterns, but the key point is the weather changes make them want to go somewhere else, much like humans do. When it's cold in Texas and the power grid's down, Ted Cruz just goes on down to Cancun where there aren't those problems. If humans can figure it out, I don't see why birds couldn't.
Back and forth during seasons without guidance. How will we predict the future without guidance?
Predict the future without guidance? What futures are we predicting exactly? I mean, I don't know if this guy thinks psychics are real, but I don't think we have that ability yet exactly. I mean, we can note some trends like climate change, for example. We can note the amount of carbon in the atmosphere has been increasing, and as it increases, it causes climactic changes on a global scale. But that's not exactly the same as predicting the future. That's just noticing patterns and running with them.
How do we know how to make things, adapt to things without any guidance? Like, where do we get the intelligence to know, like, for example, I live in a cold climate in the winter. like that we have to build, we have to need to make, warm clothes, sweaters, coats, mitts, hats, so forth. Where does...
If you didn't figure out how to protect yourself when things got really cold, you would not pass on your genes. So those who figured out that they could wear the skins of other animals and the fur of other animals survived and were able to pass on their genes. That doesn't seem like an especially hard thing to figure out. I mean, humans originated in sub-Saharan Africa, migrated north and east into the Middle East, and then into Europe and Asia and so on and so forth. And as we migrated into these colder climates, we sort of learned pretty fast, like, oh, we have to do something to protect ourselves. We must wear animal skins. But I assume that we figured it out well before that. It doesn't seem like a hard thing to figure out that if you are cold, you could just take this fur from this animal and use that to make yourself warm. That seems like a pretty obvious thing. And then you pass that down to your descendants. You take those ideas, you let your descendants know about them, they pass them on, so forth. Eventually, the knowledge aggregates. Seems like some pretty easy stuff to me.
Where does that come from? Where does that thinking come from? Where does that wisdom and intelligence come from?
Well, the brain. The brain is responsible for thinking and wisdom and intelligence. And why the human brain is what it is a very interesting question indeed. Why is the human brain so much more adept in a lot of ways at these sorts of things? And one of the answers is actually quite fascinating. I mean, one of the speculations is that a cosmic ray caused a DNA change a really long time ago that led to a greater brain capacity, a greater brain density, I should say. And that resulted in modern Homo sapiens just outcompeting our hominid competitors like Neanderthals and so on. And then we became the dominant hominid on Earth.
If it's just unguided, where does it come from? I would like to know. Please tell me, my atheist and evolutionist.
See, these are good questions. I actually like this. I like that the guy is asking questions. And yeah, I'm making fun of him a little bit. But the thing is, I want him to be asking these questions. I want people to be asking these questions. These are great questions, and I appreciate it. I keep hitting my computer setup. I'm sorry if you're actually watching and not just listening. It keeps shaking. My apologies. But anyway, good. It's good to question. Questioning is where you get knowledge, obviously. So it's good. I appreciate it. And I hope that he finds this video or reads some books and finds the answers, because they are out there. I mean, he's on YouTube. YouTube has people like Professor Dave and Forrest Valkai, experts at these sorts of things, who can explain these subjects very well, and I hope he finds them. My guy, if you see this video, please ignore how I've made fun of you a little bit here and there. It's nothing personal. Check out Professor Dave and Forrest Valkai, their videos on evolution and chemistry and the biological sciences and those sorts of things. They're fascinating. You would love them if you have this many questions. And most importantly, keep asking questions.
Partner right there. I would like to know, where does all this come from? Where does intelligence come from? Where does rational and logic come from? If we're just unguided, moist robots, to borrow from Richard Dawkins.
Unguided moist robots is awesome. I've got so many band name ideas just from listening to people like this, but I guess that one came from Dawkins, although I haven't heard that one in specific or don't remember if I did. But that's awesome. I love that.
Then where the heck is all this coming from? Where do we get logic? Where do we get reason? Where do we get wisdom? Where do we get thoughts and feelings and emotions and all that stuff? Where does it come from?
Well, most of that would come from our relation to other humans. So you meet other humans, you realize you have a lot in common, and you relate to them more in some way, and it gives you a greater understanding of them and their issues. Like, this is one of the things that I love about living in big cities like New York City or what have you, that you meet people who are so different than you, that if you had biases against them or how they think or act or feel or how you think they act or think or feel, those biases very quickly get challenged. You find yourself having empathy for people who are very different than you, people whose experiences are nothing like yours. And through that, you gain knowledge and wisdom and compassion for them and understanding. And it's a beautiful thing, and I can only encourage more of it in the world.
If we're just stardust, as Neil deGrasse has said.
Didn't he say star stuff? I think star stuff is the term, but maybe that's just Sagan.
If we're just stardust.
I think we're not just stardust or star stuff, as it were. I think we are more than that. Like, we are obviously thinking, feeling machines, and that's pretty cool.
Who cares where we even came from, because it doesn't even matter where we're going. Which means ultimately nothing matters anyways, including the very thoughts in your head and the feelings you have.
Well, technically correct to an extent. I mean, the universe doesn't care, but that doesn't mean we can't care. I'm a pretty nihilistic person in general, but there are things I care about. I mean, I care about educating people. I care about showing love for other people. I care about being charitable. I care about showing compassion and sympathy for other people. I care about making money sometimes. I care about a lot of things. And I don't see why that's like such a big issue. Like, just because the universe has no meaning doesn't mean that you can't have meaning. We all have some kind of meaning, even the most nihilistic among us. I mean, I am a pretty nihilistic person, but I still have some degree of meaning, and I think that's really important, having meaning, finding it. But I do understand where he's coming from, because I have had existential crises over these very issues. When you start to realize that the universe is an uncaring place and you could go at any moment, that's a scary thought. The fact that the universe just doesn't care about us, whether we live or die or are happy or sad or poor or wealthy, that it's all just chance, that sucks. Let's be honest, that sucks. But once you know that, you can start thinking about it and start trying to understand it and understand what you can do with it. And that makes all the difference in the world. So I get it, I do, but it's not as bad as it seems at first.
So please, tell me, where's the proof? Where's the proof of no designer, no creator, no guidance?
Well, you can't prove a negative. Technically, there could be one. Technically, a lot of things could be true. Something we have yet to even think of could be true, as it has been many times throughout science and history. So it could be, but I don't think it is. I don't think there's any good reason to think it is.
Where's a proof for natural selection? Where's a proof?
Museums. Museums are really cool. You should go to some museums. Museums will have plenty of answers for you that books like the ones I mentioned earlier won't have. Museums are very in-depth about this stuff. They're great.
For macroevolution or for divergent speciation.
Well, I mean, macroevolution is essentially just microevolution over very long periods of time. If you have small changes, large number of them, over a long period of time, you end up with speciation. I mean, the lines between species aren't really that strict per se. Think about dogs and wolves. Dogs, domesticated dogs, come from wolves. They are an offshoot of wolves. Wolves still exist, and they are very different than dogs. But, I mean, can we really say that dogs are worse than wolves or anything like that? No, we can't. That's just how things work. Some wolves split off to become dogs, and yet wolves still exist. But they are related. I mean, wolves are the grandfathers of dogs. It's a beautiful and fascinating process.
Even if evolution is true, how do you get life from non-life? And if you're going to, don't even bother telling me about abiogenesis, this bullshit theory of life. We get matter from non...
Strong words, my dude. Abiogenesis is one thing, and I think obviously it is a correct thing. We are trying to figure that out. It just takes a while. But I must also point out that even if there is a God who created us and abiogenesis didn't really happen, even if the explanation for mankind is that God gathered up some dust and formed it into a man and breathed life into his nostrils, then cast a spell on him to knock him out, take out his rib and say woman, and there was a woman, even if that's how things happened, that's still life coming from non-life. I just hope you know.
Organic matter from non-living matter, because come on, this is bullshit. We're not 3 years old.
Yeah, watch your mouth, my guy. That's not very nice. Let's keep it friendly here, okay?
Let's not just play these stupid, childish bullshit games. We all know abiogenesis is a freaking joke, alright?
No, we don't, or we would not be atheists, and scientists would not be scientists studying it. Scientists have been studying it for, as I said, probably 100 years or more, maybe 150, 200. And they wouldn't put that much effort into it if they thought it was BS. They just wouldn't.
But tell me, show me, where's the proof? I want the proof of a world without God. I want a proof of the world.
I hope that banging is not as loud for y'all as it is for me. If it is, I apologize, but there's not much I can do about that.
World without a designer. You show me the proof. No, don't give me this crap about the presence of evil. That's not proof that there is no designer. That's just proof that things have gone awry.
that's just proof that God didn't design things very well. As I pointed out in another video, if I were God and I didn't like the concept of evil, you know what I would do? I would not create it. The fact that evil exists seems like a big problem, not because of like any atheist arguments I could use, but rather just because it doesn't seem like the best move for a God. A God that knows how everything is going to end. Why would he create evil? I mean, the Bible says God despises, detests evil. And yet it exists, and he created everything, so it stands to reason he created evil. Why?
But that's not proof of absence of the designer. Now, you may say maybe it's a bad designer, but that's... We can at least start with, if you're going to say bad designer, but at least we're going to have to start with the fact that there is a designer.
Well, I appreciate that thought, Slavic Tony Hawk. You see, the thing is, if you want to say that there is a designer, I think it is a good starting point to say, well, he must not be perfect. He must not have the best designs in mind. Because really, there are a lot of bad designs in nature if there is a designer. And, you know, the whole evil thing. Again, why would you create that? Why, if I were like, I really hate olives, but I'm the God of the universe, why would I be like, you know what, I'm still going to create olives? No, I hate olives. If there were one thing I could wipe out of existence other than like child poverty and leukemia and all that good stuff, it would be olives. If there was just like one like thing that I could eliminate from the history of the universe, it would be olives. If I were God, I could circumvent that by, you know, never creating them in the first place.
Now, of course, I'm going to take issue with the bad designer, but that's a different part of the argument.
Well, you shouldn't take issue with the bad designer part of the argument, because I think it's readily apparent that the design is just like not that great. Think about the human eye. I mean, our optic nerves attached to the back of our eyes, and because of that, we don't have any cones there to detect light. So you have a blind spot in both eyes. That, as people like to point out, is not a fantastic design, and other species don't have this problem. I think cephalopods don't have this problem, for example. Some species don't have that problem, but we do. Very curious of a design there, isn't it?
Or different arguments altogether. But for now, I want proof of a
You can have it. Please just stop banging on the table. What did the table do?
Of origins of life, absent a creator and designer. I want proof, and I want it now.
Well, I appreciate the energy, if nothing else. I mean, yeah, like, you know, this guy has a lot of questions, and that's good. And apparently he has paid some attention to Dawkins, so that's also good. But, you know, I really think what I would say to a person like this is just keep looking, just keep searching. You'll find whatever it is you seek. If you want to think that God created the universe, if you want to reject all the scientific evidence for that, be my guest. That's all up to you. But I think it does rob life of something very special. I think it does rob something from us about ourselves, about the nature of us, about the nature of the universe and the reality of things within it. So I would not encourage it. I would encourage you to keep questioning and keep thinking and keep searching and keep trying to find the answers to these things. Maybe not demand them of me, because I am not a scientist. I'm very knowledgeable in some areas, obviously, but that doesn't make me a scientist. Maybe find some scientists. Scientists are friendly people. I've messaged scientists before just because I was interested in something they have written, and it sparked amazing conversations that went on for a long time and became genuine friendships. So yeah, just talk to scientists. They're open, they're willing. I mean, don't come at them very harshly like, you need to prove to me that this stuff is real. No, just ask them questions like you asked here. Like, so message a scientist who's really into birds and be like, so why do birds migrate? How did they figure out to do that? How do they know to do that? And I'm sure you'll get some good answers, and it could be a good conversation, and you could learn a lot, which it seems like you want to do. So, random man, you know, Slavic Tony Hawk, I really hope that you keep searching and find what you're looking for. I'll be rooting for you, buddy. But please, please,
stop hitting the tape.